We are joined now by the one and only Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntsy, what's going on, man?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Well, hello, MB. How are things?
Not bad. I'm curious to know your thoughts, Damon. You're a veteran of the drop-off line. It gets worse in the summer, right? Like summer camp drop-off line. It's like a special circle of hell.
So the thing that's funny you asked, right? So the thing that makes summer people, they already don't follow pickup and drop off rules. And summer, it's like times 10 because a lot of times it's parents, no disrespect to any parents that just want some of their alone time. They can't wait to get those kids there and they don't even have anything to do. So, so like the sense of urgency to not follow just simple driving rules is heightened.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
And then you mix in the people that have to have grandparents do pick up and drop
Oh,
off.
yeah.
And like my in-laws are perfect pick-uppers and drop-offers. They do it regularly, but you get the summer grandparents doing it, and it's chaos.
Well,
It's
now where do
chaos.
we go again?
Yeah. They're backing up. They're parking where they're not supposed to.
Do you have cones?
Anyway. No cones. Maybe that's the problem.
Oh, you need to get some cones out there.
So this particular school in question that I'm talking about has not only crossing guards, but they've gone from small, regular looking cones to big orange and white candy corn cones, because apparently people try to get either weave in and out of those or drive over them occasionally.
Just need to bring out the concrete barricades next. Let's go.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Every day, every morning of summer drop-off is like the car chase scene from Boy. Like, it's just hubcaps everywhere, people dragging their cars,
kids hopping out of the cars while it's still moving.
What, you got Scotty Scheffler in your drop-off line or what?
Yeah, I got cops hanging out the car.
Allegedly.
Not even allegedly anymore. Those were dropped.
Getting their $80 pants ripped. Yeah.
Beyond repair, Bruntsy.
Sorry. Excuse me.
I feel like the drop-off line in the summer is probably like Dodge and the interstate on Saturdays. You don't have your normal rush hour crew. You got people that normally don't go those directions. And so even though there's less traffic, it is a nightmare.
I just don't understand why we can't take 80 east or west on Dodge and not have it be backed up.
It's always backed up.
Nothing's impeding progress. Just
people
drive.
Just slow down.
Yeah.
God, it's crazy. Everybody getting off on 132nd to go to Walmart. They even give you another option to go 114th and 120th. Get your ass in gear. Bruntsy, I got to ask you something because your colleague started this a couple of weeks ago. Well, last week.
Which one?
It was Mike J, and he was talking about like making the observation that everybody is uniquely pulling in the same direction, whether it's support staff, recruiting, coaching, strength and conditioning, nutrition. And it just got me thinking as we listened to that Coach Campbell clip. Are these things that when we hear them say, hey, such and such is responsible for this. He collects the data. I do this. It all goes back to reporting to the big man. And I believe in communication, and he processes so you can tell it's well oiled. Is this just like, wow, this is cool? We haven't seen it done like this before? Or do you get the sense, you know what? This is just what functional programs should be doing all the time. We're not used to it.
Both. I mean, I think that's what functional programs should be doing. I mean, college football programs that have the resources that Nebraska does are, I mean, for lack of a better comparison, they're corporations, right? Like you've got so much money involved. You've got a really large group of people that are working for you, and everybody has the responsibilities. I mean, I think more of it is the structure that you provide that. And I think that's the difference. I mean, when you talk to lot of people on Matt Rhule's staff, not a lot is kind of left to chance. You know what I mean? Like, I think people know what they're supposed to be doing. They know what their little corner of the world is that they have to be responsible for and to dominate. And you also have the expectation that, like, you know, Matt Rhule kind of has his hands in everything and wants to know everything. And I mean, as an example, you know, I've covered 5 camps this week, and even if it was a 14-year-old kid who, you know, was probably only just working out because, hey, it's a chance to go work out in Memorial Stadium, play a little football. Like, every one of those reps was being recorded by somebody, and somebody was probably going to watch those reps. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, that level of detail, I think, is probably what stands out to me the most. Like, and I think good programs and good organizations kind of have the common trait that you're good at details. Like, that's what you do. And I mean, Matt Rhule has high expectations for people. I mean, he talks about that repeatedly, and you know, I think he challenges people to step up and do things, and I think people respond to that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think there's a level of organization there that has not been at Nebraska in quite a while. And I think part of that is just because of the way that Matt Rhule runs his program.
Interesting. That answers it well enough to get a follow-up, because it led me to believe. So the part that may actually be unique is the fact that we have a head coach that dabbles in, like, you know, folklore studies. He's an avid reader. He's talked about Malcolm Gladwell. Like, we know he's extremely bright. You have to have somebody there that can actually process the data too. It's not just enough to churn and burn the numbers, but there's like this applicable component where it's like, okay,
find meaning.
All right, well, so what do we do? What do we do with what I know?
Yeah, well, and I think what helps that too, and you're right about Matt Rhule. I mean, I think he spends a lot of time thinking about those things, about recovery, about, you know, the way that they're lifting, the way that they're eating. I mean, that's why they went. I have never in my life gotten a message from somebody, one of my coworkers, about the fact that the hire that they made on the nutrition staff was a big loss for an SEC program.
Yeah,
like, that's not.
Yeah, but you got one this time, didn't you?
Yeah, so,
she's incredible.
Yeah, but I mean, my broader point is like, as much as Matt Rhule thinks about all those things, and you kind of have to, he goes out and finds the right people that are experts in what they do, and kind of, you know, lets them work. Like, I don't think that he's, you know, a micromanager. I think he thinks about things, but I think he also gives people latitude to kind of do what they're going to do and what they're good at. So, I think good programs, and I've thought this for a while, mainly from a recruiting point of view, but the programs that generally recruit well, it's the head coaches that are among the best recruiters on the staff and set the tone for everybody else and set the expectation. And I think that Matt Rhule, the one thing that he does a really nice job of is he sets the tone and the expectation, you know, in a lot of different areas that I don't think a lot of college coaches probably do.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, I'm glad you brought up the term micromanage, because as we're having this conversation, and I agree, I don't think he micromanages his staff, and I think it very clearly puts talented people in positions to do what they're talented at. Where I do think you could make the argument, if it went wrong, is with the players. They ask very specific, very detailed things of their players, and they kind of walk them through that process like you were talking about earlier. And I think that's necessary in order for development. But my question then is, how do you prevent that type of philosophy from turning into micromanaging your players' lives?
Yeah, at some point the players do it themselves.
So when they take ownership of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about setting a standard. It's about setting expectations, and then, the hope is that, you as time goes along, you have to police things a little bit less and less, and you have Ty Robinson policing things, or Isaac Gifford saying, no, this is how we do things. I think there's probably a little bit of a entry delay for some of the younger guys coming in and getting used to doing things in a very particular way. But, I always go back to something Matt Rhule said. He said he gives his staff and players the gift of high expectations. And that always stuck with me, because I was like, oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. And I get what you're saying, Robbie. I think though, at some point you get the players owning it more than a position coach having to kind of constantly be over somebody's shoulder and always checking that they're doing the right things.
Like when Gifford hops in and kind of corrects somebody
can take
on a
over a drill
versus Cooper having to do it.
Right. Or, I mean, there's only so much time that coaches can be around players too. So, a lot of the summer stuff is player run, and that's where you're leaning on those veterans to run things.
You know what's interesting, because it's a good thing I'm learning to be a good listener after 50 years. I was 50 years old when I learned to listen to a conversation that doesn't directly involve me. I'm listening to the micromanaging and the autonomy thing, and there are times where I know Coach Rhule may go read or get on the treadmill or go get a workout in with Coach Campbell or something when they're in offensive and defensive meetings. And sometimes I kind of didn't believe it at first until I've actually seen the practical application of it. And I asked him about it, and he says, I want to empower my coaches. They're paid a salary. They need to be able to do their job. They're hired because I trust them to do a job. But let's not kid ourselves, DB. I'm still in the know when and how often I want to be. How much of what you guys are kind of talking about with the passing off versus the term micromanaging has to do with the fact he knows when he can want to know things all the time, but knowing when to let things happen in the natural course of what they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a feel thing.
I kind of agree. Yeah, that's a good term, feel.
And I don't know. I mean, I think my sense is that he has a pretty good idea of how he wants things to run. And I don't know. I mean, you're a coach. I mean, are there times where you kind of let things happen and kind of see if it can be a learning experience? And there's probably times where okay, this is going a little sideways. Let's get in here and get things back on track. I mean, I think that's part of it. And it's the thing you brought up about, him kind of wanting to know what he wants to know. I mean, it was clear, last spring that he was watching a lot of interviews that were being done with assistant coaches and kind of hearing what they were saying, because he would bring it up.
Yeah. Good call, Bruntz.
And I was, yeah, I mean, he was aware of what was being said out there, for sure. And I think that's kind of an example of it. I mean, I'm sure he's probably not sitting there clicking through every interview from spring ball, but if there was one he wanted to listen to, I'm sure he was able to find it pretty easily. So,
okay, he just keeps Bruntz. Man, we don't hang out enough. Okay, so to that, the balance, again, I'm going to use the word, the balance between being in the know and kind of having rabbit ears, we've seen ruin some head coaches here, right?
Yeah.
But Coach Rhule, he has this way of letting you know he knows without, he doesn't seem passive aggressive or petty, but you do understand, and it's a great catch by you, and I'm sure your colleagues are there as well as some other bright guys, but he lets you know he hears what's being said, right? but he doesn't come across as paranoid.
No.
Or does he? I don't want to put words in your mouth. For me, he doesn't. I think he's pretty crafty.
Well, I mean, it's there. What's the old Sports Illustrated article about Bobby Knight was the rabbit chaser thing. If you keep chasing the rabbits, eventually the elephants will kill you. Like you can get caught up in the minutia of things or chasing things that are unimportant or score settling or whatever. I think that sometimes can be an issue for coaches, especially at big programs, and kind of figuring out what's worth your time. I've never gotten the sense from Matt Rhule that he's been particularly hung up on that stuff. I mean, like even in post game and things like that, he'll mention sometimes like I've heard this week or
the infamous Maryland reference. Well, last week you guys wanted me to kick the field goal, right? I mean, I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. He's been around enough. He gets it.
Yeah.
He understands that piece of it. But yeah, I mean, I think your read of it's probably correct. I mean, he's pretty good about letting people know what he reads and hears, and I mean, I think he's very aware of narrative things. I mean, even going back to last spring with the discussion about what Heinrich Haarberg's role was going to be, I think he was clued in pretty quickly about what people were saying about that.
Bruntz, so there's this thing that DB brings up all the time and something he wants out of his Nebraska coaches, and that's that he doesn't want it as the head coach. He doesn't want it to have been their best job as a head coach. Do you think that matters in the way that Rhule processes information? Like if you're coming from
his experience, that's
sure. What I mean. If you're coming from never being a head coach like Bo Pelini, or if you're coming from UCF like Scott Frost, or you're coming from Oregon State like Mike Riley, and you just have no familiarity at all with, not in a real sense of like what it's actually like in a place like Nebraska, like how much of it do you think is that where it's just like, oh, he's kind of seen, like it got pretty ugly at Carolina there for him.
I mean, Baylor had to be awful,
especially at the beginning, right? Like Baylor had to be terrible. Carolina got ugly at the end. Like, is it just a matter of like, I've been through this, what you guys say, like there's just an experience and maturity there that we haven't, just from their resumes, haven't had from many Nebraska coaches recently?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a unique resume for sure. I mean, I think probably being a player at Penn State was pretty instructive too. I mean, I think you probably get when you're in a big program like that, I think it's really valuable experience. Obviously what he went through at Baylor, I mean, that's pretty darn unique. And I mean, Temple, he had to build at Temple too. I mean, that was the other thing. I mean, that was not a job where every year that was just going to kind of run itself. So
yeah.
I mean, I even think back to, I think there's value in kind of having to go through things too that are just kind of unique. Like, I don't know if this is a good example, but even like Ken Miles, what he faced his first year at Colorado State. I mean, some of the stories he tells about, things that you have to navigate. I mean, teammates with guns and stuff like that. I mean, like that's not in like the coaching handbook. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, he in terms of Matt Rhule, I mean, I think he's just kind of the sum of all those various experiences. And he's, this is his third college program that he's led. I'm sure he learned a lot in the NFL about what works and what doesn't, and kind of reflecting on that. So I think it's all valuable. And you're right though. I mean, he does have a very different resume from coaches that have come into Nebraska over the last 20 years.
It's interesting that you say that. Again, thank goodness I'm learning to listen. There's been this bugaboo, right, about the Metro and why can't coaches just go 45 minutes? And your colleague is infamous. He had one of the greatest meltdowns ever when he's like, it's not that hard. It's Friday nights. Like they're in town, like get in your car. And Coach Rhule would say, I've been to Philly, right? East Philly. I've been to You should see where I recruit some of these guys out of. You think I'm intimidated by coming into Omaha? Nebraska hasn't been able to lock up a city that's 45 minutes down the road. He goes, it's nothing. I respect the city, but I'm certainly not going to be uncomfortable. And I just was like, that must be that simple versus easy thing, because you say it so casually, and I believe every word of it, because you do. You'll come here a couple times a week, and it's, hey, no big deal, right? You're going to do your thing. And it has been very, very hard, for whatever the reason, for people to get over that hurdle. I think a lot of it has to do with his experience.
Was it? I mean, you can speak to it better than I can. I mean, it's just time, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, is it that simple? Like,
well, so Bruntz, what do you do with the fact where he says, he'll go to a basketball game, or he'll hang out with somebody that may not be super popular, or he'll sit with somebody or be seen somewhere, and he said, listen, I'm going to do me. I'm going to live my life authentic. The quote, he was great, right? He's like, I don't cheat on my wife. I don't do this. I don't do that. Like, I'm going to be me. I'm not going to live in fear of being authentic. And I just was like, it was so refreshing to hear, because that's all I've ever wanted. Not all. That's a big part of what I wanted from leadership. Like, whoever you are, be that person. And once he said that, I'm like, gosh, we so have a chance. He's not going to be bogged down by the tradition coalition, or whatever that term is, or former players, or what. Like, he's going to do things his way, whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the Metro. I mean, I'm sure that was a big part of it. I mean, just the other part of it is too. I mean, whatever happened before is not on Matt Rhule's tab. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
and he's clear about that too, isn't he?
Right. It's true though. I mean, like, you can't go back, 8 years ago and send multiple assistants to Omaha. But I mean, authenticity probably goes a long way, and just being upfront with people. I mean, that's not unique to Omaha. And I think that's why he's had a lot of success, recruiting to this point. Authenticity and relationship building is a big thing in recruiting, and it always will be.
That's Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntz,
not on your tab, Bruntz. I love it. I'm gonna put that on a T-shirt.
We appreciate your time as always. We'll talk next week.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.
Don't forget, wearing your seatbelt can prevent injuries and save lives, but only if you wear it properly. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.